57, 58, 59, 28 minutes. 28 minutes, 1 second. 28 minutes, 2 seconds. 203, 204, 205. Yeah. 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 1052, 1053, 1054. Yeah. I'm ready. Yeah. What is up, FunAhead friends and family? Guess what? We've got the teeny tiny, itty bitty little sport coat on again, which can only mean one thing. We're starting a new freaking Porsche project on this channel right now. Let's get into it.
Rippin', tearin'. The rippin' and the tearin'.
Well, all right, everybody, and here it is, my 1998 Porsche Boxster base model. It now has just over 107,000 miles on it after we road tripped it home, where we bought it in Seattle, Washington, all the way back to Columbus, Ohio, where I live. Now, aside from some minor issues with the coil pack that decided to go out along the way, this thing did wonderfully the entire trip home. And of course, we resolved that coil pack issue. It didn't really end up being that big of a problem. Go and check out that video if you haven't seen it yet. It was a pretty fun little video, if I do say so myself. So you might be wondering, what the heck are we gonna be doing with this car? Well, this car is 26 years old and it has 107,000 miles on it, and it has a lot of original components in it. And while its owners have taken very good care of it throughout its lifetime, well, it's an old car. It's a quarter-century old now. We've got to do some things to bring this thing up to mechanical snuff so that we can do what we're going to do with this car, which we'll talk about in a future episode. I am super excited for what we've got in store for this bad boy. So definitely subscribe if you want to see what we've got coming down the pipeline for it. The only thing that I know about this car is what we saw when we put it up on the 2-post lift at my friend Arthur's house in Seattle when I bought it. Now, it looked fine from the undercarriage, but you know, obviously with these Boxsters, you've got to take some covers off in order to actually see into the engine room. I haven't even done that yet, so I have no idea what lies beneath these covers. So not only are we going to find that out today, but we're going to actually just pull this engine entirely and make an entire big old checklist of all the stuff that we're going to need to do to this car in order to make it tip-top cherry and ready to rip roar come springtime. Let's get into it. Gosh, it's a nice day. But man, is it sunny outside. I really wish I had just a little bit more protection for the top of my head and my neck. Oh, that's right. I can go to FunAheadTV.com and get one of the new FunAhead TV straw hats. Wow, now I feel super protected against the sun. I could sit out here all freaking day. That's right, folks. FunAhead TV now sells super sweet straw hats. They're an absolute game changer. But to celebrate it being fall time, these things are 15% off now through the holidays, just in case you guys want to get one for that special loved one who really needs a straw hat and who loves FunAhead TV. And to add to the savings, I have a bundle deal going on right now. Now through the holidays, you can get a straw hat, a FunAhead TV t-shirt, and a FunAhead TV vinyl sticker for just $49.99. That's a total of 22% savings. So if you're struggling for some holiday gift ideas, well, look no further than FunAheadTV.com. These deals are only available while supplies last. So first things first, we need to get access to the top of the engine. Now, in order to get access to the top of the engine on one of these, you need to put the top in what's called service position. So we're going to turn the ignition on, pull the parking brake, get our windows down. Okay, now once the roof is in service position, as it is, as you can see, there's a couple little clips on the back part here. You need to drop this down and then do the same thing on the other side right over here. Okay, now that's loose, and then there's these little cables. For reference, that cable is right here on the back corner of the car. There's one on either side. Just have to pop those off, and then we can swing this whole thing up. I'm gonna go ahead and do that because I kind of need two hands to do it, and then we'll pick up from there. You can put the top up more towards the closed position a little bit further to allow this to be up, but allow this to still, you know, be folded up, and it just stays nicely. Otherwise, if you have the top further back, then this always just wants to fall down and then it gets in your way right here. I went ahead and took the padding off of the engine cover. That was just 4 little clips, and that just comes right up. And then it exposes this, the engine cover. These are super nice. You just lift little tabs up and turn them, and then that allows the engine cover to be loosened up. And then from there, we lift this, and there's our engine. Okay, so there is the intake manifolds and plenum for our beautiful M96 2.5 liter engine. If you've seen one of these before, then you've seen every one of them basically. They're just varying displacements of one another, except there is a pretty notable difference with regards to this one versus all of the other ones we've ever worked on this channel, and that is this right here. That's right. Instead of having a drive-by-wire system on this car, it has a physical throttle cable, which is exactly why the 1999 model year versions of the 996, 911 are so desirable, because that was the 1 year of the 996, at least for North America, that was released with a throttle cable as opposed to drive-by-wire. And I can actually tell a difference just from driving this car that actually the throttle cable cars are much nicer to drive. We do see one thing right there that we're going to replace, and that is the air oil separator. I don't know if or when this thing has ever been replaced, so we're just going to go ahead and do it while the engine is out, once we get it out, of course, because that's going to be an absolute pain in the butt to do if we ever had to do it with the engine in the car. These right here are the shifter cables, if you're wondering what the heck that is being draped over the engine, because the transmission, of course, is behind the engine in these cars, and all of these cars are cable actuated shifters, and that's the way that they got the shifter cables to get back to the transmission. They threw them up over the engine. Kind of interesting. Okay, now moving inside the car, you can see I've already made a little bit of progress here, but I'm going to explain it. Once you fold both seats forward as much as they can possibly go, then you will have better access to the piece of carpet / padding that covers up the front firewall. That is held down by just 4 little nuts that go on these studs right here. Little plastic nuts, you can just pry those off really easily. Then that exposes this little metal plate, which is held down by a series of 10mm nuts and bolts. Once you get all of those off, then you get access to the front of your engine. That's how to put one of these cars into service mode, and you know, it takes maybe 10 minutes and you get basically full access to the top and front of the engine. That will help us out immensely when we're dropping the engine out of this car, because we'll need to remove certain components, disconnect electrical connectors, etc., before actually taking the engine out of this car, and top and front access are essential to that process. Okay, so car is up in the air, as you can see. I went ahead and took the frontmost undercover off. This is the one that goes basically right up in here. So I've spent the better part of the last 30-ish minutes spraying bolts down with PB Blaster in preparation for the engine removal. Quite a few of these bolts are actually fairly rusty. One thing I'm not looking forward to is this exhaust, because those look super rusted up. And of course they're exhaust bolts, so they've been heat cycled 8,000,003 times, which makes them extremely hard to take apart without breaking them. So I do have a few things to do this evening. I might just call it here. I'm gonna give it one more good look over really quickly and make sure I didn't miss any bolts that we need to soak down. And given the rusty-ish nature of a lot of these bolts, it won't be a bad idea to just let them soak overnight. That way tomorrow morning when we come back to the car, hopefully they'll be nice and soaked down. As long as that exhaust doesn't fight us.
As long as that exhaust doesn't fight us. As long as that exhaust doesn't fight us.
All right, folks. It is now, I think, almost a week later. Remember when I said, I'll see you guys tomorrow because I've got stuff to do? Well, somehow that turned into a freaking week. I got busy. I had to travel literally across country for something. Anyway, we got the exhaust off right here, there. Yeah. That was honestly a huge headache, and finally got it off.
As long as that exhaust doesn't fight us.
We had to get the exhaust down in order to get the engine down. Why did we have to get the exhaust down? Well, because this little piece of subframe here will need to come down. In order to get this piece of subframe down, well, we need the exhaust down, which runs exactly right here. Now, this car was an Ohio car for the first 6 years of its life, and I think it was driven in the wintertime during those years in Ohio. Exhaust bolts are always a pain in the butt. Those are always very difficult to take off because, of course, they've been heat cycled 8,000,000 times. So just the expansion contraction aspect of it causes them to kind of seize together. But then when you add in any amount of corrosion from rust, well, they just become impossible. Well, as you can see, I have already broken 2 exhaust bolts that hold this header on right here. So I decided, well, I'm not gonna go ahead and break all freaking 6 of those. I decided I was just gonna separate it here, easy peasy, right? Well, these bolts were an absolute freaking pain in the butt. Not only were the nuts completely rusted and I couldn't turn them at all, and then the nuts were just seized onto the studs, but several of the studs were completely seized inside of the header like this. Here, you can see a little bit better from this angle. You can see what I ended up having to do. I took my angle grinder and just literally cut this off. And some of these did come out, but this one, like for example, you can see my tool mark here. I've literally tried to take a punch and punch this little bit of the stud that's left out of there, and it will not budge. It is in that freaking header so badly. So anyway, needless to say, I fought and fought and fought and fought and finally got the exhaust down. And that took me, I would say, the better part of an entire afternoon. So I'm really crossing my fingers that from here, we're not gonna encounter too many hiccups like that. Obviously, exhausts are always a bit of an unknown quantity. Now we can kind of hopefully be full steam ahead with the rest of the stuff. So with all of that being said, what's next? Well, we have to take down the half shafts, which of course are an unknown quantity in themselves. There's 6 bolts per half shaft that holds it to the transmission. Stripping out any one of those could absolutely stop us in our tracks. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Of course, the transmission mounts, the engine mount up front, coolant lines, and then we need to start removing things like the shifter cables, any electrical connection that is between the powertrain and the body. We need to remove the AC compressor, which we'll talk about in a little bit. We need to access that from the top side, obviously. The clutch slave cylinder, fuel lines, power steering lines. I'm probably forgetting like 50 other things. The ground strap that is always attached to the body. Okay, now because I mentioned it earlier, what do you say we go ahead and just try to see if we can loosen up these bolts for the CV shafts really quickly? That's gonna be the next big hurdle and is going to determine whether or not we continue to make quick progress on this car. Let's find out. So these are just a 6mm Allen, and I've got my little ball-shaped ones because it's kind of hard to come straight on to these things. Here we go, first one. Okay, that's one. 2, 3. Nice. 4. Okay, got it. 5. Yes. Come on, 6. Yes. All right, one CV shaft loosened up from the transmission. I'm gonna go ahead and get these loosened up, and let's go ahead and try the other side. All right, good news, folks. I went ahead and attempted to loosen up all of these as well, and all 6 of them came loose on this side. So I just gotta go ahead and take out these bolts the rest of the way, but we officially have 2 loosened up CV shafts, so we can keep chugging along. All right, well, I'm under the car here, and I've got my favorite automotive fluid of all time draining out of the car. My favorite freaking automotive fluid, just all over me. You know it's good when you get a bunch in your mouth, you know, and you're like, furious.
A few moments later.
Good news is we are just about wrapped up on the bottom side of the car. As you can see, we've got the 2 major out-in coolant pipes removed. These are all the hoses going to the heater core over here. I've got this kind of pushed out of the way. Throttle linkage is disconnected. And then over here, I have the power steering lines disconnected. Oh, I did forget the fuel lines. We do need to remove these 2, this one and this one. Let's move to the top side, shall we? Let's start getting some stuff done up there because I am so done with getting showered in coolant. All right, we've got the car lowered down. Let's take a look at this bad girl from the top side now that we're actually taking stuff off of it. So, a few main things to pay attention to on this top side. Now, with regards to the throttle linkage, keep in mind, we just disconnected that from the bottom side. We're gonna leave this as it is. This is the power steering fluid reservoir that will need to be moved slightly because we need to get access to the 3rd bolt on the bottom side of the AC compressor. This vacuum hose that goes all the way up to the brake booster needs to come off. The air intake tube needs to come off of the throttle body right here, and then this will need to, this is like a little resonator in the back that will need to kind of be disconnected. That air line that goes to the secondary air pump right over there needs to be disconnected, and that connector that is connected to the secondary air pump is part of the engine wiring harness, I believe, so that needs to be removed as well. That right there is the ground that I was talking about, this right here. That's the one that's on the lower side of the engine on the 911, and in this case, it is connected to the body via that same mounting bracket that The secondary air pump is on. So those are a lot of the main items from the top side of the engine that need to be removed. From the back side of the car, we'll need to remove the dipstick because that goes all the way down into the engine, obviously. And then we'll need to remove the oil fill tube. And then, in addition to this stuff right here, we will need to remove or disconnect the engine harness from the body. And that's basically all right here. And these are the harnesses that come from the engine through this hole in the body right there via this little grommet that seals off between the engine room and the trunk. So we'll disconnect these here and then feed these wires back through that grommet. And those will stay with the engine as we drop the engine down. All right, so I think I'm gonna start in the back here and I will work into the car. For now, I want to disconnect the electrical harness first. And one thing to pay attention to whenever you're doing stuff like this is be extremely careful with these connectors. In the event that you bend a pin that is going to the ECU, it is a bad, bad day because things will be acting way wonky electrically and you're not gonna know why. And so diagnosis is gonna be an absolute pain in the butt. So you have to be very, very, very intentional when you're taking these connectors on and off to make sure that you do not damage anything. And I'm not trying to scare anybody from doing this job or any kind of work like this. I'm just saying when you're doing it, be freaking careful. But let's just give a quick overview here. As you can see, there's a ground here that needs to come off. I believe we're just gonna go ahead and take the ECU off of this mount of the mounting posts here. That way we can have easiest access to the bottom side here and we can just disconnect the main connectors going to that. Basically everything you're looking at will need to be disconnected and all of that needs to go out of this little hole in the rear firewall before we can actually drop the engine out. I went ahead and got everything disconnected back here. Again, it's very self-explanatory. All of these just have these little kind of safety latches that you slide this way and they get kind of stuck, so you can use, you know, the assistance of a flathead to kind of pry on this side to kind of slide these out far enough. But once they slide out far enough, they completely unlock the equal and opposite side of the harness. This is what I was talking about before with the pins. As you can see, there's lots of very delicate looking pins on the inside of this ECU, and this is exactly where all of the electrons pass back and forth between the harness and the ECU. All of that being said, we've got it disconnected. Now let's start working underneath the engine cover here and getting some of that stuff removed. Okay, so first things first, let's go ahead and take off our serpentine belt. That will allow us to begin working with the AC compressor here. I just have a 1-inch socket, 6-point socket for turning this tensioner nut here. It's not a 1-inch nut, but the 1-inch socket will get us close enough. It's what I always use for doing these. And you'll see, boom, it loosens us up. There. Serpentine belt loosened, just like that. Then we'll just work it around, pop it off. Easy peasy, squeeze my lemon.
What did you say?
Alrighty here. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the condition of our belt, and seems to be in fairly good shape. I mean, it's definitely been on the car for a second, but I mean, the belt shows no cracking, so we will go ahead and continue to run this thing. One less thing we gotta buy. Okay, now the next thing I'm gonna begin tackling is getting the AC compressor removed. Now, why would you remove the AC compressor as opposed to just leaving it with the car? Well, when you do that, you would have to disconnect the AC lines. And in order to do that, you have to evacuate the system completely, which means you would then have to evacuate it again and recharge the system completely later when you're putting it back in the car. So it's just a lot easier to go ahead, remove the AC compressor, leave it with the car. That way you can just drop the engine and not have to mess with a fully functioning, good to go AC system. It's just a pain to crack open one of those systems. It introduces a lot of potential problems when you introduce humidity into the lines, etc. You just don't want to deal with it, so I always choose to just leave it with the car. So unfortunately, one of the 3 bolts that holds this AC compressor in place is basically blocked by this power steering fluid reservoir. It's just kind of awkwardly perched right on top of where we need to go to both get our wrench on top of that bolt and to have enough headspace above it to get that bolt out. But before we do that, I'm going to remove this right here, which is our little junction box. This is our main positive cable that comes to the engine, and then this is the positive side that goes straight to the starter. We're gonna remove those so that we can remove this little bracket. That will give us better access to where the power steering fluid reservoir mounts. So 2 13mm bolts takes these nuts off, then it's 2 10s from there to pop that bracket off. Alrighty, now with our little junction box out of the way here, you can see here's our starter positive lead just kind of hanging out. We've got the junction box out of the way, which gives us nice access to our little cam lock for the power steering fluid reservoir. When I say nice access, I don't mean great access. It's still pretty buried, but it's way, way better than without removing that. So I'm now just gonna go ahead and push that down, just lefty-loosey style, and you'll feel when it has a definite stopping point. Okay, so now that our power steering fluid reservoir is out of the way and sitting on our parts table over there, we now have really good access to all 3 bolts that hold the AC compressor onto the engine block. There are 2 up at the front of the engine, and then there's 1 in the back underneath the intake manifold. Those are 13mm bolts, loosen them up, have at them, and then you can start finagling that AC compressor out of the way, and then we'll just go ahead and set it inside of the car. So as I'm working along here, I've noticed that this engine, I don't believe has ever been out of this car. I know the transmission has, but this engine, I don't believe has ever been out of the car. Why do I say that? Well, you can just tell as you're taking stuff apart, nothing has tool marks on them. All of the wiring harnesses are in like their exact places they need to be. Case in point, there is a single wire, signal wire, that goes to that AC compressor, which is right here. And that, I'm fairly certain, is the original zip tie that secures that connector to the rest of the electrical harness for the engine. Anyone taking one of these engines out, even like a dealer tech, would not go to the extra effort to put that zip tie right back on that engine harness. It wouldn't be perfectly aligned in that spot. That is pretty freaking cool to see. Okay, now let's go ahead and work on the intake tube, and then we can work on everything pertaining to that ground wire and harness and hose related to that secondary air pump on the right side of the car. So starting with this intake tube, we have 1 primary hose clamp that goes around the throttle body, of course, that fastens the intake tube to that. Once we loosen that, then we actually, I think, need to disconnect this little 10mm bolt right there, which holds down this mount for this resonator that's back here. Deepest apologies. I've just spent the last like 15 minutes doing like DEFCON 5 levels of just like disconnecting stuff.
What the hell are you talking about?
But I will recap right now. In 10 seconds, roll the freaking clock. I disconnected this ground wire, this hose, the little connector going down to the engine room temp fan, the connector going to the secondary air pump, throttle body. I disconnected the oil fill tube and the dipstick. Oh shoot, and I also did this little vacuum line right here. All you need to do is pull out this little clip right here and then push this down this way, and this just slides off. Oh, and I went ahead and pushed through this little grommet here for the wire harness. This just pushes through super quickly and easily. So we have basically everything staged on the top side of the engine, ready to go. I do have a couple more things yet to do on the bottom side. We have to disconnect the slave cylinder for the clutch and disconnect the shifter cables. Probably a couple other little things that I forgot along the way. But for the most part, we're getting pretty freaking close to dropping this engine. So yeah. Hey. All right, we are just about at the point where we are literally ready to drop this stuff out. I went ahead and disconnected the shifter cables underneath. I started to loosen up the transmission mounts just so that we can really easily kind of finagle those and remove them. I pulled off the slave cylinder, so that is now just laying freely. And then I pulled the CV shafts up and out of the way. Then I gave the underside a really, really good double check to make sure that we have in fact disconnected all of the things. I've got my transmission jack and my lift table sitting right here, which means we're just about ready to get these things in place and take this engine out of the car. Well, folks, and there you have it. The engine and transmission are now out of this super sweet base model Boxster. I'm gonna go ahead and call it here for today. Obviously, we achieved a huge milestone in getting the powertrain out of this thing, but next is the big task. We need to sum up everything that we need to do in order to refresh this engine entirely, make the big old parts list, and start refreshing this thing. Right now, of course, we know a handful of the items that we're going to be doing to this thing: intermediate shaft bearing, timing chain guides, AOS probably, oil cooler, clutch pressure plate flywheel, rear main seal, but we don't know the full extent of it, and obviously we don't even know what the condition of so many of the powertrain components are. A lot of that is going to be figured out once we get the valve covers off and really be able to look inside this thing a little bit. Next episode, we're going to inspect every little thing and really get a good grasp on everything that needs to be replaced. So with that, thank you all so much for being here today and going along with me on this journey of dropping this engine and transmission out of our super sweet budget base model Boxster. And definitely subscribe if you want to see the next episode where we really figure out all the stuff that we're gonna have to do to this thing to get it real nice and refreshed like. Thank you again so much for being here today. I can't say that enough. I appreciate each and every one of you for being here. Yes, I'm looking right at you, and I will see you all in the next episode. See ya. My knees are killing me.
Rippin', tearin', the rip